So to give the listeners some context, and people remember this now, it's been kind of swept away because it turned out not to be true, was that after President Trump won the election in 2016, instead of the media saying, oh, we were wrong, because again, everyone thought he had zero chance of winning, they said, okay, well, we couldn't have been wrong. It must have been the Russians who worked with him. And so at first, when this started coming up, I thought this was ridiculous. I mean, I was very intimately involved with the operations of the campaign. I was running the finance of the campaign. I was running the digital media of the campaign. I was running the schedule for the campaign. And I knew that on most days we had trouble, coordinating with ourselves, let alone, collaborating with another government and or colluding, as they called it. And so we did a great job, I think, as an underdog campaign, very leanly staffed. And then they said that, we were working with the Russians. And so at the time, I didn't take it too seriously because I knew there was no truth to it. But it was amazing to me to start seeing all of these institutions, whether it was CNN, the Washington Post, New York Times. These were news organizations that I grew up having a lot of respect for, taking these accusations so seriously and then working themselves up in order to just cover it for 2 years. And then as a result, you had a special counsel, you had a House investigation, a Senate investigation. And I personally spent about, I think, over 20 hours just testifying before these different committees. Again, spent millions of dollars out of my own pocket on my legal fees to make sure I was well represented. And the reason I did that was because I saw in Washington, it was like a sick game, right? It's almost like, even though there was no underlying problems to the accusation, I felt like this is one of those things where they're going to try to catch you. And then if you step on the line, they catch you with one misrepresentation, they're going to try to put you in jail or worse. And so for me, that was a big concern. So, it was amazing. I mean, my poor mom, I told her to stop, reading whatever. I said, I promise you, we didn't do anything wrong. It's good. But, she'd call me and say, well, our friends were, on the Upper East Side, we're talking with Chuck Schumer, says Jared's going to jail. We know for sure that he colluded with the Russians. And this is like a leading senator saying things like this. And so it was just interesting for me to see how the whole world could believe something and be talking about it that I knew with 1,000% certainty was just not true. And so seeing that play out was very, very hard. Obviously, I was accused of a lot of things. There were times in Washington I was radioactive. I remember one weekend, it was all over CNN. They had panels on CNN, like the news organization that I grew up thinking was like the number one trusted name for news in the world, talking about how I'd committed treason because I met with an ambassador and said, we'd like to hear your perspective on what you think the policy should be in Syria, where there was a big civil war happening and ISIS and a lot of different things. So it was quite a crazy time in that regard. But luckily, again, we were able to fight through it. It was a major distraction for our administration. I think we were able to kind of stay focused on the objectives and the policies. But it was a crazy time. And I learned a lot from that experience.
It's crazy how